having a rule in place, and this obviously takes some discipline around no impulse buying. So if you've got that urge to go and do something, you basically set yourself a timer and say, I can't do this for at least 24 hours.
Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics like wealth creation strategies, investment principles, creating passive income, paying off your debt faster, and much, much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew. Bills, here we are. We are back again and back on the 360 Money Matters podcast.
Back again in the hot seat, Andrew. And I reckon this one's really going to hit home in terms of our listeners and our viewers, simply because thinking about this...
It's a catchy name.
Well, it's definitely a catchy name. We may have borrowed some inspiration from other podcasts that we've heard it from and listened to. So if you guys are listening to us, then thank you for that. But no, I think the timing is great because I think it works perfectly on the back of the heels of all of the Christmas spending.
Yeah.
So Andrew, what are we talking to everybody about today?
Today we're talking all about, and we're jumping on the bandwagon of Frugal February. I think it's, as you said, I think it's a great idea. I mean, one, it's catchy. Two, December or the end of December and start of January is always a period of overconsumption for most people and most household budgets. So if you can follow that up with a period of underconsumption in February, then I think that's going to put you in good stead from your own money management. And you might take some of the things that you do in February and start to implement it for the remainder of the year as well.
Let's think about how when we go on a diet or a fast, because that's a bit of a fad these days, and you deprive your body of food and it basically cleanses and cleans and strengthens itself.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. I'm getting really excited.
Yeah,
really excited here, Andrew. All right, so look, frugality, I think it's important to point out why it's so powerful, but just to let everybody know what it is not. It's not about deprivation. I mean, it's part of it, but that's not what it's about. It's about being intentional about your spending. And I think if you can get into that position, that shift in mindset, I reckon that's such a powerful thing for people because it gives you such a sense of control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you got to look at it as, it's something that you're trying to do over a short period of time.
Yep.
I mean, this is your, I'm going on a diet. This is your, I'm trying to, lose weight in a short period of time. And I'm not going to go back to, overconsumption and overspending in March. But what I am going to do is take some of the good things and take some of the wins that I had in February and, be able to utilize that for the remainder of the year. So looking at it and having the mentality of, hey, this is a short-term thing that I'm really trying to just see how much I can drive out of this, I think is another part of the mindset that you need to have when you're going into it as well.
Yeah, and the short-term sacrifices lead to, long-term financial freedom. So, if we've learnt anything in all of our years advising clients on what to do with their money, it's, those small things add up and do make a difference over the longer term if you're intentional with that money and you do something with it. And just the other thing too, the psychological benefit of delayed gratification, especially in this world where actually I'm just looking out the window now, Andrew, and someone's picking up an Amazon package from the counter, and that's not intentional, the timing of that, but at a click of a button, you've literally got stuff that's just appearing on your doorstep.
Yeah.
In some instances, hours later, but most likely the next day. So I think a bit of delayed gratification and trying to get that back into our system is definitely a positive thing.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So look, I think a really good starting point with all of this is setting a goal. I think that you need to have a clear goal and you need to have a clear outcome at the end of it and it needs to be a measurable goal. So you can't say, I'm going to save more this month or I'm not going to spend any money this month on anything that's non-essential because it's too vague. You can't actually measure success. It's too hard to stick to. So what's your savings goal for the month? And make it has to be more difficult than what you're currently doing, right? So if you're saving, $1,000 a month, saying, hey, I'm going to save, $1,000 a month this month and I'm going to stick to what my original savings goal is. That's not Frugal February. That's just budgeting and cash flow management. Frugal February is saying,
Yeah.
hey, I'm saving $1,000 a month normally. I'm going to save $1,500 this month.
Yep.
You know, what can I do? What can I cut out? That'll be, you know, how you actually implement the strategy. But as a starting point, you need to, one, know what your normal savings capacity is, and find something that's going to stretch yourself to have something to aim for.
Yeah, and I think just a few little hacks to help you along your way with that is that measuring your progress. You know, because if you can't measure it, then how do you work out if you've achieved that?
Yeah.
That'll also help with staying motivated and staying on track. And the other one, which I love, is if you share that goal with someone, you verbalize it, you're actually putting it out there to them, and you're making yourself accountable with it as well too. And, you know, depending on who you share this with, maybe you can ask them to say, hey, can you do me a favor and check in with me and keep me on track and hold me accountable, because this goal is really important and I want to achieve it.
Yeah. And if your goal is to save, let's say, an extra $500 a month, you know, break it down. I mean, what's that going to mean? That's going to mean, okay, over the course of the next, 4 weeks, I need to save $125 more than what I'm currently doing each week. That sounds so much more achievable. And it's like $125 a week. Like, far out, I could do that easy. I mean, that's one dinner on a Saturday night that you don't go to, like, or that you don't eat lunches out this week, or bringing it and breaking it down to smaller bite-sized pieces. One, helps you measure your progress, but two, it also means that it sounds so much more achievable. I know people that do, this type of thing, and you're talking about, okay, it's exactly the same thing with dieting, right? If you say, I need to eat, or I need to be under my calorie surplus, by, I don't know these numbers, so forgive me if it sounds wildly inaccurate, but 3,000 calories for the month. Well, that sounds massive. But if you break it down and say, I just need to be, an extra 100 calories a day.
Yeah.
Well, that's 100 calories a day less. Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
So break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces when you're working out those goals. One, so that you can measure the progress, but two, so that it sounds like a far easier and manageable thing to do.
Yeah, and you can gamify it a little bit as well too. So there's a thing going around on the social media channels and stuff like that about the no spend or the low spend challenge, which is basically, as the name suggests, but you cut out all unnecessary purchases for a particular month or for a particular period of time.
I'm going to throw back to our own heritage, right? Because I think that, and call me out if I'm wrong, or you think that another nationality does this better. I think the Greeks do this better than anybody else in the world. I'm calling it.
This is a big call. I don't know where
this is a big call.
I don't know where you're going with this, but
so for those that are not in Melbourne and they're, let's say, in other states across Australia, one of the very typical things, and this is, you see it everywhere, in Oakley. So Oakley is an area that is very heavily concentrated with Greeks. There's a strip there. Every cafe, every restaurant is Greek. And unlike what happens, so normally you go to another restaurant, you're in that restaurant, within, an hour and a half, waiter's on you like, hey, are you going to order something else? Are you ordering dessert? You got a 2-hour seating, get out of here. What these Greeks will do is order one coffee and they'll drink that coffee, and it's an iced frappe, and then they'll pour water in the iced frappe and they'll drink that and then pour some more water in there. And what they've done is they've sat at a table, they've consumed a waiter, they've consumed a table, and they've been there for 5 hours sipping on the exact same coffee and haven't ordered anything else. And so definitely a loss leader for the restaurant, but it's so frugal. So that's one way to do it, right? Take a page out of, I don't know how many restaurants will let you do it. And probably anyone who owns a restaurant is going to be hating me right now. But if you can order one drink and you still get the pleasure of going out, catching up with a friend, feel like you're going out, and you sit on that drink for 4 or 5 hours, that's one way to, maybe not the no spend challenge, but low spend, I mean, you're not buying lunch, you're not buying food, you're not getting multiple drinks, you're not buying, expensive alcohol or anything like that. It's one coffee, 4 hours.
What you are missing here, for people that don't know, at the same time that those Greeks that sit on that one coffee for 4 or 5 hours, probably go through 2 packets of cigarettes.
Well, that's a different story.
At that same time.
We're isolating
they're
that
spending
out.
the money somewhere else. But anyway, I digress, right? Okay, so there's the no spend, the low spend, or the Greek coffee drinking challenge. So we've definitely got that. The other thing is having a rule in place, and this obviously takes some discipline around no impulse buying. So if you've got that urge to go and do something, you basically set yourself a timer and say, I can't do this for at least 24 hours.
I love it. And
then you'll go through that motion or that thinking and thinking about, okay, do I really need this? Is it a want? Is it a need? And then you come to that decision. And the idea is that the impulse purchase is out of your system in that 24-hour period, so you don't actually end up buying it in the end.
Yeah, really smart idea. And what that does is, and this I think should be a practice in, almost anything, it focuses on rational spending rather than, irrational spending. You're not going to be able to not spend money, and nor do you want to have that life where you're not actually spending any money at any point in time. But what you're doing is saying, I'm only going to spend money when I actually want and need something. I'm not just going to, immediate, quick thought, and it becomes so much easier these days with, having Apple Pay and all of that stuff on your phone and on your, tablets and laptops and all of that stuff, so that you click a button and, you don't need to enter all these details or anything like that. But make a decision on what you're spending money on. Don't just, let it walk out the door and not really know where it's going.
Yeah, and look, you're absolutely right. Easier said than done, because all of the, let's call the retailers out, but there's millions of dollars, probably billions each year that are spent on research designed to try and
everything's working against you.
Get people through marketing, advertising, consumer psychology is designed to get you to spend more money more frequently in these stores. So yeah, that's easier said than done, but. One of the ones that I love, and this has actually happened recently, so I've got a really good story, is the meal planning.
Yeah.
And thinking around your groceries and what that does look like. And we had, so in Victoria, probably the same for most states and territories around the country, but the kids are going back to school from the Christmas holidays. So we bought our groceries and, need to fill up on snacks and make sure they've got everything for their lunchbox and stuff. So we did a really big shop, and we click and collect from the local supermarket. So I went and picked up all the stuff, and I just looked at it and I'm like, we've just ordered way too much food here. And not the non-perishables, because they'll stay in the cupboard, but the perishable stuff, so your meats and bits and pieces. And I said to my wife, Samantha, I said, look, we're going to throw half of this stuff out. So one of the hacks that I've got is, rather than doing one big shop, doing 2 smaller shops, rather than one big shop on, like, say, traditionally a weekend or a Friday night or a Saturday morning or whatever it might be, just break it down into 2 smaller shops. And the ones that you're going to, with the items that you're going to buy, with those things that are perishable, buy them in that second shop if you can, based on your meal planning. So you're not buying, say, meat on a Saturday and you plan to then eat it on the following Thursday, because, you might decide, hey, we don't want to, cook tonight, so we want to do something different. We're going to Andrew's house for dinner, whatever it may be. It's just a smarter way of doing it to prevent the food loss.
Well, there's one. Go to Andrew's house for dinner and mean that you ruin his Frugal February, but Billy's is working out perfectly.
Well, one of the dot points here is cooking at home versus dining out, but the same sort of thing is go to Andrew's house.
Yeah, eat on someone else's budget.
That's it.
Look, I think one of the other ones is, you don't want to not entertain, right? Or not be entertained. I don't know. That's a weird way to talk about it, but you need to still enjoy your life to some degree. And I get that Frugal February is something that you're doing over a period of time, but staying at home and not going out is also not conducive to mental or physical health.
Yep.
But think about activities where you don't need to spend a lot of money and you're still getting the pleasure of enjoyment. You're talking about going to, a museum. Museums are a relatively low entry, or going to a community event, or going to a, park, or things that are not necessarily going to cost a lot of money, but are still going to get the benefits of entertainment, getting out of the house and doing something. So I think that, doing those kinds of activities might also unlock some other hobbies, some other interests that you haven't actually thought of previously.
Yeah, and, local councils are putting on events all the time, but parks, beaches, our botanical gardens, there's a whole range of different activities that you've got that can be free.
February is a great month for it as well. I mean, the weather's good. I mean, we're not talking about, a period of time where the weather's pretty rubbish and you can't enjoy the parks and the beach and all of that stuff. We've got a pretty short window when it comes to weather, particularly in Melbourne. So, yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of entertainment, thinking about the streaming services, Andrew, so it's really easy to end up, which I need to do an audit, by the way, so the pot calling the kettle black here, but I need to, clean those up. But essentially doing an audit with your streaming services and going, okay, how many have I got? Have they crept in? Because it's so hard to see because there's such a small amount, $10, $15, $20 a month. They add up.
Yeah.
They really add up. So doing an audit, seeing if you can get rid of them, and Netflix isn't going to like this, but if there's opportunities there to be able to share subscriptions, or some of them are always doing a free trial for a month or whatever it may be. So, maybe you get one through a free trial that lasts a month, that then closes and you find another free trial in another 30 days time.
Well, look, what we do, and it's funny, we were talking about this last night because my wife has some shows, Stacey wants to look at some shows on, or wants to watch some shows on Apple TV. And we have a limit on how many streaming services that we have. And so it's like, forget Apple TV, we've got to get rid of another one.
Smart.
So one in, one out. That's one way to do it on a long-term basis to make sure that you're not, having multiple streaming services that continue to creep into the overall budget.
Yeah, I like that idea, actually. That works really well. So if one thing comes into the house, and that's actually not necessarily just for subscription services, that could be a good way to not only be frugal, but also to declutter as well too, is that if you bring one thing in, you have to take the equivalent out.
Does it have to be equivalent size though?
It probably has to be a similar item.
Okay.
So if you buy a jumper or a piece of clothing as an example, a piece of clothing
another one out.
has to come out. If you buy a pair of shoes have to come out.
Yeah,
I like
that's a good way to do it.
Yep, I like that one. So, Andrew, side hustles.
Yes.
So obviously we've been talking, frugality really talks about a lifestyle change and more so around the expenses side. But I think at the same time, it's also a good opportunity to talk about increasing income. Now, we're probably in the best position that we've ever been as a society to try and create side hustles because, you can do a lot of business over a computer from absolutely anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Look, I love this idea. I mean, one is, yes, you've got some additional income coming in. So that's the obvious factor of it. But I think that the maybe not so obvious factor is if you're focusing on a side hustle and if you're focusing on something that you're, working on that's going to deliver additional income, well, it's probably taking an element of time, effort and energy. And that's time, effort and energy that you're not spending on entertainment. Yeah. The moment, I think that probably the time where you're spending the least amount of money is when you're at work because you can't spend it on anything other than just focusing on your job. Potentially, maybe going out and eating lunch. So focusing on a side hustle, one, to bring in additional income, but two, to occupy a part of your time that you otherwise would be, spending on entertainment.
Yeah. Andrew, I like it. I reckon we've done that a bit of justice, and I reckon that this could probably be a good foray into some future episodes as well too, based on the feedback that we get from everybody, because there's some really practical things in there that, there's depending on how far and wide you go with this, there's benefit. And I think in terms of the spectrum that you could adopt this on, you could do a little bit of it and be satisfied with it, or you could take it the whole way and do a whole range of stuff. But I reckon there's more to unpack here, and definitely did that one justice.
Successful, we'll go to, Money Management March, and then we'll go to, what starts with A. I don't know. I've lost it.
Maybe we'll throw that one out to the listeners, and they can throw their suggestions in the mix. What do you reckon?
Exactly. Right.
No, Andrew, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time today. To our listeners and our viewers, thank you as well too.
And we look forward to catching you on the next podcast. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we've talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
Just a reminder to our listeners that the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and it is not intended as personal recommendations for the audience. Please consider whether the information suits your circumstances before acting on it. This information is provided by Billy Amaritis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Proprietary Limited, authorised representatives and credit representatives of AMP Financial Planning.